Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a simple rule that can lead to absolutely extraordinary outcomes. And the best part? It's not about massive heroic effort. It's about the incredible power of tiny, consistent improvements. So, let's start with a story. For the longest time, British professional cycling was, well, it was kind of a joke. Seriously, for over a century, they were completely shut out from the biggest prize in their sport, the Tour de France. We're talking an epic, 100-year-long losing streak. And then, just like that, something shifted. In just a few short years, they went from being the perennial losers to the most successful team in recent memory. They started dominating not just the Tour de France, but the Olympics too. So what on earth happened? It wasn't some miracle rider, and it wasn't a sudden flood of cash. The answer is actually a really simple but revolutionary philosophy. The person who was tasked with solving this century-long problem was a guy named Dave Brailsford. He took over as performance director for Great Britain's pro cycling team back in 2010. And he brought a completely new way of thinking that would literally transform the entire sport. Brailsford's whole belief system was built around this idea, the aggregation of marginal gains. Now, I know, it sounds super complex, right? But the idea is stunningly simple. He believed that if you could find and improve every single tiny thing related to cycling by just 1%, all those small, almost unnoticeable gains would add up. They would compound into a massive overall improvement. And when I say they took this idea seriously, I mean they took it to incredible length. I mean, look at this. They didn't just focus on the obvious stuff you'd expect, like training plans or diet. No, they went after 1% improvements in places nobody else was even looking. They tested different massage gels to see which one led to faster muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach the riders the proper way to wash their hands to avoid getting sick. They even found the perfect pillow for each individual rider to guarantee a better night's sleep. Absolutely nothing was considered too small. And the results? Well, they were just staggering. Brailsford predicted that his strategy would get them a Tour de France win in about 5 years. He was wrong. It only took 3. This wasn't just a fluke. It was solid proof of a really powerful principle at work. So, here's the crucial point. This isn't just a cool story about sports. It's a fundamental principle of how change and success actually happen in pretty much any area of your life. Let's actually look at the math behind it. So if you get just 1% better each day, the effects are, well, they're barely noticeable in the short term. But over a year, you end up massively, hugely ahead of where you started. And on the flip side, a 1% decline each day, a series of small bad habits or poor choices, it doesn't seem like a big deal at the time, but it compounds into a really steep drop-off. It's those tiny decisions, repeated every day, that create the huge gap you see over time. This isn't a brand new idea. In Japanese culture, it's known as kaizen. It's this philosophy of continuous improvement, but specifically through small, incremental steps. It's all about making progress sustainable by focusing on tiny, consistent changes, instead of trying to make these huge, overwhelming leaps all at once. The legendary business philosopher Jim Rohn, he summed it up perfectly. Success isn't about some grand, heroic action. It's about the small, smart choices you make consistently every single day. And failure, well, it's the exact same principle, just in reverse. Those small, seemingly insignificant errors in judgment that just add up over time. All right, so if these small choices matter that much, how do we make the right ones easier to make? Well, the answer doesn't really lie in willpower. It's in shaping the world around us. Just think about a supermarket for a second. The items at eye level or the ones stacked up at the end of an aisle, they sell way more than anything else. Why? Because they're the easy default choice. This is a principle called choice architecture. Our environment powerfully nudges our decisions, often without us even realizing it. The key then is to become the architect of our own choices. Now, there are really 2 ways to get better. We can focus on addition, doing more great things, or we can focus on subtraction, doing fewer bad things. Back in the 1970s, Japanese television manufacturers absolutely crushed their American competition. And it wasn't because they made radically new TVs. It was because they relentlessly eliminated errors and waste in their production process. They improved by subtraction. And this graph shows it perfectly. We all want to improve our average performance, right? We usually try to do that by chasing greatness, that green area. But an equally powerful and honestly often easier path is to simply cut off the low end, that red area. Just stop making the unforced errors. Eliminating your mistakes is such a powerful and totally underappreciated way to improve. So, how do we do this in real life? Just look at your environment. If your phone is your alarm clock, well, checking email first thing in the morning becomes the default. If your living room furniture is all centered around the TV, then watching it becomes the default activity. The crucial point here is to make your good habits the path of least resistance. Put a water bottle on your desk. Put the floss right next to your toothbrush. You have to design your defaults for success. So we've talked about shaping our external environment, but perhaps the most powerful application of this whole 1% rule is when we stop looking outward and we start applying it to our own minds. The tool for this is called cognitive restructuring. It's a core technique from cognitive therapy, and it's basically the principle of marginal gains, but applied to your internal world. It's all about making small 1% improvements to your thought patterns. Let's walk through an example. This is what's known as an automatic negative thought. It just pops into your head and it feels completely 100% true in the moment. It's a conclusion we just jump to, a lot of times without any real evidence to back it up. So instead of just accepting this thought as reality, cognitive restructuring teaches us to treat it like a hypothesis in a science experiment. The very first step is to become a detective and just ask, what is the actual objective evidence for and against this belief? And then you explore other possibilities. Is it possible there's another reason for this behavior? Maybe your partner just got a really stressful promotion and is working longer hours, and they're just exhausted. This one single question can break the entire chain of automatic negativity just by introducing other, more likely scenarios. So this framework gives us a simple but incredibly powerful process. By systematically asking these questions, we can start to see our thoughts not as facts, but just as interpretations. And every single time you do this, you make a small 1% improvement to your mindset, slowly breaking that cycle of automatic negativity and building a more resilient and accurate view of the world. Okay, so we've covered the power of marginal gains, designing our environment, and restructuring our thoughts. Now let's tie this all together into a simple, powerful system you can start using like today. Real, lasting change isn't about one single heroic effort. It's about building a better system. So first, you identify a tiny 1% improvement. Then you design your environment to make it the default choice. And finally, you use cognitive restructuring to challenge those internal beliefs that might be sabotaging your progress. It's a complete system for both your actions and your thoughts. This isn't just about learning something interesting. It's about putting it into practice. So the final question is for you. What is the one small, almost unnoticeable thing that you will improve by just 1% today? Thanks for joining this explainer.